I wanted to talk about several months of updates I put in my game. I have froze a little bit of the screen just to catch up what we talking about, but this was before I started redoing the environment. So I had quite a few updates through several months, and then I had a few months break. So as you can hear, I added sound effects. I started adding them, but they very much not same volume is the hardest part for me is adding sounds. I redid that laundry. Hanging laundry is all done in Blender. But I'll show you what it was before and I still think it's much better. So this is the previous laundry which was completely just drawn frame by frame. And I think laundry, out of all my Blender attempts, laundry was most worth it to keep it. I'll show you a couple of other failed attempts. I basically was started to get tired of my environment and like how it's really looking is started getting really hard for me to build the map. So entire map is gonna be basically scratched and redone from beginning. And I'm still not sure if I'm doing the right way because I was thinking about 3D, using Blender just to do it entirely from scratch. I was thinking maybe I should fully hand draw it, but I just didn't feel like mixing my pixel characters with fully hand drawn like traditional art would necessarily work. Also a lot of like sizing issues and pixelating anyway or quality control. I also included this rain effect, which now is instead of being a specific trigger where you trigger certain actions and something happens, you can apply it to entire environment. It's like I think it's like environmental receivers or something like that. You mark things that can interact with, and so this was heavily Zelda inspired. The problem with me is if I see something somewhere else and I'm like, I think I can also do it. So the same happened with laundry because House Castle actually uses 3D program or Harmony or something like that, where they stretch over hand painted textures and things like that. So specifically, we were using flags, for example, in House Castle. They were all 3D made in the beginning of the movie, if you know what I'm talking about. So that's what really was like, oh, I could make my laundry better. So I always feel very ambitious that like, oh, I've seen it, I think it's doable, especially if it's coming from something older that technology now significantly expanded. So that's why I experiment a lot. And I think my learning curves are just so high and I'm pretty proud that I'm just attempting it without like a lot of knowledge. And then I wanted to show you the completion of this pond. So this is all hand-drawn pond, originally very long ago now. But the last stage of it is that I made, there's also this drop. I don't remember if I presented it to you, but I made a different drop as well. But if you notice, there are fishes. These fishes are all also made on Blender. I am very bad at building. There's not enough splashing, but I kind of like that. It made it definitely livelier in addition to the shadows that I have hand drawn. I probably can also make it better, but it was pretty good attempt, I think. Um, I was also merging a lot of my maps, so the transition is not smooth because I think I haven't looked about overlap of some elements that kind of crash it a little bit. Uh, but I made basically all these environments, but some of them were two scenes. I started merging them into one scene. Uh, this is another area that we have seen on another vlog. So the piles of straw are also blended. I changed them. They before were hand drawn. And also these buildings on the pier there that you see at front, these are all Blender made. So I really was just experimenting with like stretching textures and like what else can I do on Blender. So those are early. I don't quite like it, but it really helped me to like build up those maps just by the way of experimenting it. The pier as well, entire pier is made on Blender. I was one of the first ones. So the stairs are actually used as like asset that exist on Blender library and just like recolored or something like that. I think the first approach I was doing was making them on Blender and bringing them to color, just using their shape. Second approach, I was trying to do some procedural things and like just color on Blender itself. Like shaders on Blender are much more friendly than Unity shaders, I think. Much more like visual. So like I think Straw was fully done on Blender by just using that. I tried to do those trees on the side here. You can see how not quite good they are, but also these were more particle like procedural, and they were really crashing my laptop because honestly using Blender on laptop is way overheating. So this is what I say, some of the zones transition is not fixed. This water, a river stream was made on Blender, um, also kind of like it. However, river above is kind of hard for me, you know, I had to definitely cover it with trees. It's hard for me to make such a big water especially. So this part of the river is both Blender and hand overlap, but the pixelated very squarey corner is actually Blender because I exported as a very low quality, and it seems to kind of work okay. Probably can still do better, but this is when I try to make it just shader use in Blender really, and then export it. What I do, I export them as images and then make animation on Unity, which sounds like a lot of memory cost because you can imagine that the loops are like 100 of. But at the same time, it's easier to make 100 frames on Blender than 10 or 100 frames. So it was interesting way to go with. Also, this light effect particles, started using more particles as well. I know it's very overbleeding, as well as my rain, if you notice. Rain makes puddles, which is also like very similar effect. Might even be using same shader or very similar shader. So started being a little bit more comfortable with shaders. Also these figurines for minigame, I have redrawn them fully so we have like more color. Would love to add animations or particles around them, but it's really a lot of effort for a minigame. Originally, I just made them very two colored basically. So I added just a little bit more like shading to their shapes. I think it's definitely better. I still wanted to keep it as almost red versus blue. There is some crash sprites which I feel like I need to review why they broke, because sometimes yes, another thing happens in Unity, the sprite just randomly um, you know, break and have like corners and things like that. I had a lot of those issues right in the beginning. There's a lot of things that you have as issue in the beginning, but it's really just like a corrupted file problem. Um, okay. So yes, this room I made in Blender as well. I mean you can't really tell, right? It looks very roughly pixelated. I don't think I even had to correct anything by hand. This is fully like made. All the furniture was fully made in Blender. It's definitely not that much better than my previous attempt. Now next here, oh my gosh, these bushes, hedges, I took like 16 versions to understand how to place them. So yeah, but you know, because color balance and so on, these three fountains, four fountains, are all different versions of a fountain made on Blender. I just want past the results to show it because the like the bottom one is made in nodes and the top ones that are gray made in like procedural water, like using actual physics. This entire building is made in Blender, and then I just corrected it a little bit. Yes, I'm very bad at building. And you know, and I even colored major parts in Blender when I gone back just to color a little bit more. I think I might keep it. It took a long time. I'm very bad at building. It took a long time. I might keep it and just, you know, do the insides a little bit better, maybe. Right. And after that, this little right, I was starting to struggle with the story as well. So I made this robot that is broken there, and I, after a while, I wanted to make it rusty. Yeah, I'm probably zooming in a spring a little bit more because I didn't know if I showed it to you guys properly. But I'm really just going through the old recordings before I started dismantling this. Um, Sorry, I was trying to put on the light because this entire area is dark. And I think that's why my map crashes right now, because I merged two dark areas and I haven't quite worked out all the nooks and crannies. So yeah, I wanted to fix the light for you guys, but I forgot how I set up. because I believe there was a separate darkness, not just global light trigger. Anyhow, so as you see, I also use a lot more light effects as well as like global volume effects and things like that. So you can actually see that I remade some lights. I don't feel like shadows work for me well though. In 2D, selecting objects and so on. That's why I think one of the things that I was thinking, like, should I just go fully 3D? Because how I make Blender right now is export them as images, and we literally can have like 100 frames, which memory wise is not great. I did this tree on Blender, and I think that's why I wanted to show originally that tree house here was also made on Blender. And honestly, again, I had like a better tree, but I'm not good at saving my files and had to like keep redoing it. So constantly there's a lot of like work around. I think the best thing is the spring. It's obviously a bit rough on edges, but like it definitely would work better than I would have been animated it by hand. I think I wanted to show you this robot in more detail because again it was a full-on animation, which actually I did a first setup of it on Blender. This again one of the first things I tried on Blender was to make this robot, and it didn't work very well, especially with motion. So what I had to do is instead extract separate frames of Blender rather than entire motion. I think I was trying to show you the layout of it. So I drawn it, I'm constructed it on Blender, put it back on iPad, drawn the texture, like drawn the coloring of it, and then use that coloring to like stretch it over the Blender figure. And actually, that was great in the ways that I didn't need to redo all the frames by hand, I guess. And I just used those Blender frames and then corrected them because I only had one side of this character, means that the face was on the back as well. So I then put them back in and corrected the back. But yeah, this was the main frames I used for it. But then I realized it looks too much like a naked man, even though it was supposed to be like a rusty goblin robot. So I am deciding to take it out of the game, but the entire process, especially stretching the texture, was something that I really still want to try to do, because I think it has so much potential, and especially would like to try like stretch traditional art over and see if I can make it happen. Recently I saw another creator who does that. The creators who did songs of Glimmerick and that is still outgoing game, also doing that sort of thing where we make planes and stretch out the drawings over. So it's really a potential I would like to explore in the future. But at the moment, this is the new backgrounds that I'm redesigning, which is still hand drawn, still a lot of work. But this entire garden, I think the color green especially was, I think, was not working for me. So this is the start of that redrawing. I did a short on this, but I don't think it's very self-explanatory. So this is, the what I had to start with. If you notice the flowers, also I have another mechanic where you can actually walk through flowers and like move them slightly. I know people do it better. They use shaders or rigging. I literally just cut it in pieces and made it like a child of it because I noticed rigging is not working easily for me. Also, I added all these other flowers, which started feeling a bit better. So that's what short was trying to indicate, that I pushed a little bit more, added shaders of footsteps. What I wanted to say about swaying flowers, that in my previous style the flowers are very rigid and very contoured, and that sway effect with shaders that works for everyone else was not working for me. So I think in this style it actually looks a little bit more natural. The footsteps also are not perfected yet, but also something extra. I'm starting to become more comfortable with particles, shaders, which wasn't a thing for me in the beginning. I was really scared of it. So I think this is really good progress. One more push was that I added beehives and actual bees. The bees actually on this version that I filmed don't flip, but now I made the particles flip so you have different rotation of them. But yeah, this was the start of this garden remake. Basically, I tried to make one area in a week's time, but it was actually way too high of a toll. I wanted to do quicker than that, but actually it does take time. So I moved on to the next week. So this week I moved into this area, which is the laundry area. We have seen a little bit on this clip. So again, I'm just changing this grass, the borders off to the water are much nicer when I don't use tile maps really. So this is was the beginning when I really just starting placing objects and starting to, you know, draw new assets, let's say, because as you see, the hill is completely new. The tree, like I have so many versions of trees in this game. I haven't settled on the version that I actually like to use, like consistently. I think another thing to mention, there is this little rock creature that was used as a block of a road, and I decided to take it out because it wasn't necessarily fitting the world. I have not thought about making walking boulders or anything like that. So at the moment, I was thinking of taking it out and replacing. So instead, I replaced it with other animals. So this is what I'm replacing it with. I am putting some ducks to be a block of the road. And as well as I actually made a new mechanic where animals can follow you. So at the moment in my game, there is also a deer that can follow you as well as a cat. So there's the first cat in my game now, and I think there will be definitely more. So nothing is really straightforward the way I do it. I started using less of the frames. Before I was using all four directions I was drawing by hand. Now I started trying to flip a sprite more often instead of, making more sprite assets. I also drawn this deer, but actually like after reviewing it, zooming in and out, I realized that it doesn't really stand very well in this environment, that even though I made all the frames of this deer, including idle and walking, and all of that, I realized that it wasn't really working for me. So I had to redo entire year, and I do like current version a little bit more, but I also realized that every time I do everything, it takes more than one attempt, one more than one version of an object. So this is the new deer that I'm using right now. It's a little bit more pleasant to look at it. It's not so pixelated, it's not so grainy. Uh, it's actually more simplified colors, really. I think that's what really helped it better. No, the hardest part is I can't even draw deer sometimes in traditional media. So, doing it in pixel art in different dimensions and restrictions is actually even harder. So this is closer to the finished environment for this area. I filled it out a little bit. Once also wanted to share about the wheat field. I've done so many versions of this wheat field, and the previous version was again animated tile, and the corners drawn by hand to restrict. Currently, this is actually not pixel art, this is Procreate, but I also try to make track. I really don't like how this track is working. There is some good things in it, it's better than nothing, I guess. Before it was not even that, right? I didn't have any tracking like footsteps. So this is at least more reactive environment. So at the moment, I'm not figuring that out. This was the previous one that no matter what I did, this was the best version. So this was animated tile and all these, more like tile objects, and actually using Unity tiling as well for just coloring it out. Um, but this wasn't interactive, you couldn't go into it. So I think it's definitely a better version. Let me share some old files. So this is where I try to use a traditionally used shader, and where I say my plants are way too contoured and it doesn't really work very well. I honestly just found it as a prefab and I dropped it in to show you guys what was some other versions I went through.
And this is some old recording I found of the particles. So I tried to do it as particles. In regard those both versions, it was just too busy. It was not pleasant to buy. It was too busy, and that animated tile was looking much more to what I wanted to end up with. Also, the fun thing is this plane. This red plane was literally just a filler because I was needing to place something in this environment. I was kind of running out of ideas or things I want to fill in here specifically on the style. So this is now came as an interesting object, which I'm actually enjoying and thinking, well, like, could I use it for a story or make something fun out of it or any other fun mechanics looking forward? So it's really like out of that desperation, I'm getting more ideas, which is how it should be, I think. So now the windmill of the fan, I first time used the windmill of the white windmill that you see. This is the first time I used actual animator to just rotate the blades. And in this spot there, really, if you saw there was a blue fan, the blue fan is hand drawn versus this one is animated by rotating the blades. And I actually it jitters right at the end because it doesn't actually count as 0 degrees, same to be as 360. So it's actually jitters at that point, even if I make a longer run. So I decided to make it and make it rotate by script. So this is actually animated by script. And if I turn on the blade that was animated by the animator, just changing rotation of Z, this is what you see. You can really see it jitters. Now, let's just look at the jittering one alone. Sorry, guys. Let's just look at the jittering one alone, right? Mhm. You see, you can really tell the difference because it really has that stop motion right at the end before changing versus the one that is just smoothly rotating. So I think it's really like a solution for me going forward for anything similar to try to rely a little bit more on the script animating. Just before I close off for this week's progress, I wanted to show it side by side environment that is currently there and the environment that was of the same location previously. I accidentally cut off the trees while trying to move it around, but the main idea is that it does have a bit of a different vibe or a bit more filled out vibe. It might change again, but I think it is a progress. I just wanted to say that it's been almost a year since I started making this game, and this was where I started originally. This is the first video I captured when I started, and I was super proud about all the progress I've done. And I literally had this one scene, literally one screen size, and I could loot at this time, open a chest. I had some UI ready. So this must have been like the first month of making this game, and this was around. I looked at the file. This was around the August last year, so it's not really been a full year, but I think I definitely made a lot, a lot for having no knowledge in game making and just learning a lot of new skills. But I remember being just happy for being able to do as much as that. The funny thing is, like, my UI hasn't changed since I made it the first time, and it's definitely something I'm looking to update in the future because cosmetically it's not necessarily the most pleasant. However, it's fairly functional. It's fairly functional of what is displaying and what is has on board and how it's working. So I think even at that stage when I started, UI and the inventories took me the longest. And as I say, it's the first month of making it because most of the UIs took me about 5 days, and that felt like absolute eternity. So doing inventory took me like 5 days ish. Doing the equipment took me that long. When the other ones were a little bit easier, because I'm talking about everything, including the mechanics of equipping, dropping, um, navigation, because I wanted it to be navigatable with buttons. It's not just, keyboard, not just click click on. So I think I've done, as a starter, even I've done quite well, but I've definitely improved significantly in a lot of new effects and learning experience. In either way, I wanted to wrap up here and hopefully do the next update next time with a possibly new area. So bye for now.